The bomb stopped falling at exactly 3:47 in the morning. Dr. Marcus. Chum knew this because he had been counting every second. Pressed against the cold concrete floor of his clinic's basement, listening to the world above him die dot for 47 minutes. The HFY warships had rained fire from the sky. Each explosion shook the ground like an earthquake. Each flash of light that came through the cracks in the ceiling was bright enough to blind. Marcus had covered his ears, but he could still hear the screaming. Then, slowly, the screaming stopped. That was worse. When the silence finally came, it was not peaceful. It was the silence of a grave. Marcus waited another hour before he moved. His body was stiff and cold. His hands were shaking. The animals in the recovery cages around him were whimpering and crying, but they were alive. A dog with a broken leg. 2 cats recovering from surgery. A small bird with a damaged wing. They had all survived because the basement was deep and the walls were thick. But everything above them was gone. Marcus pushed open the basement door and climbed up the broken stairs. What he saw made him fall to his knees. New Thessaly was gone. The colony that had been his home for 15 years. The place where he had built his clinic, made his friends, and created his life was nothing but ash and rubble. The beautiful glass domes that had covered the agricultural zones were shattered. The tall buildings of the city center were now just twisted metal reaching toward a gray sky. The air smelled like burning plastic and something else. Something that Marcus did not want to name. 80,000 people had lived in New Thessaly. Marcus could see no one. He walked through the ruins like a ghost. His feet moved, but his mind was somewhere far away. He passed the school where he had given talks about animal care. It was a crater now. He passed the hospital where his friend Sarah had worked as a nurse. Only one wall remained standing. He passed homes and shops and parks, and all of them were destroyed. The HFY had done this. The tall, scaled, dragon-like aliens who had an embassy on the edge of the colony. They had smiled at humans in the streets. They had traded goods and shared meals. And then, without any warning that Marcus knew of, they had burned everything to the ground. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. It was hot and bitter, like poison. He wanted to scream. He wanted to find something to break. But there was nothing left to break. The HFY had already broken everything. He was walking toward where the HFY embassy had stood when he saw something strange. The embassy was gone, of course, turned into a massive crater like everything else. But in the center of that crater, something was glowing. Marcus climbed down carefully. The ground was still hot in some places, and he had to watch where he stepped. As he got closer, he saw what was making the light. It was a nest. A HFY nest, made of some kind of metal that had survived the blast. And inside the nest were eggs. 6 large eggs, each one the size of a football, sat in a circle. They had patterns on their shells that shimmered like oil on water. 5 of them were cracked and dark, clearly dead from the heat of the explosions. But one egg was still glowing. A soft golden light pulsed from inside it, like a heartbeat. Marcus stood there for a long time, looking at that egg. The HFY had killed everyone he knew. They had destroyed his home, his city, his entire world. They had taken everything from him. And now here was one of their children, left behind and helpless. His first thought was simple and dark. He could crush it. One stomp of his boot, and there would be one less HFY in the universe. It would be justice. It would be revenge. No one would ever know. His second thought was that he was a doctor. He had spent 20 years of his life learning how to save living things, not kill them. He had made promises. He had taken oaths. He had chosen this work because he believed that life was precious, that every creature deserved care. But did that include the children of murderers? Marcus sat down on a piece of broken metal and put his head in his hands. He stayed there until the sun began to set, painting the gray sky with colors that seemed wrong for such a dead place. The egg kept pulsing, kept glowing, kept living, even though everything around it had died. Finally, Marcus stood up. His legs were stiff and his back hurt, but his mind was clear. He knew what he was going to do, even if he could not explain why. He picked up the egg. It was warm in his hands, warmer than he expected. The light inside seemed to pulse a little faster when he touched it, as if the creature inside could sense him. "I don't know if you can hear me," Marcus said to the egg. His voice was rough from dust and smoke. "I don't know if you can understand, but I'm not going to let you die. Not because of what your people are, not because of what they did, but because of what I am." He carried the egg back to his clinic. The building was half destroyed, but the basement was still safe. He made a nest out of blankets and placed the egg inside. He turned on the emergency heating unit that had survived the blast. He sat down next to the egg and watched it glow in the darkness. Somewhere out in space, Marcus knew rescue ships might be coming, or they might not. He had no way to contact anyone. He had no way to know if any other humans had survived anywhere on the planet. He was probably alone, the last living person on a dead world, but he was not completely alone. He had the animals in their cages, and he had this egg, this small piece of enemy life that he had chosen to save. Marcus did not sleep that night. He just sat there, watching the egg, wondering what would come out of it. Wondering if he had made the right choice. Wondering if kindness to an enemy was strength or stupidity. The egg pulsed on, steady as a heartbeat, waiting to be born into a world of ashes. The egg hatched on the third day, just as Marcus was beginning to lose hope. He had been sitting in the basement, eating the last of his emergency food bars, when he heard a sound. It was a small sound, like tapping from inside a box. Marcus looked at the egg and saw a tiny crack forming on its surface. He held his breath and watched. The crack grew longer. Then another crack appeared, and another. The golden light from inside grew brighter. Something was pushing against the shell, fighting to get out. Marcus had helped many animals be born in his years as a vet. He had delivered puppies and kittens, helped horses and cows, and once even assisted with the birth of a rare bird. But he had never seen anything like this. The shell finally broke open, and a small creature tumbled out onto the blankets, thought it was not what Marcus had expected. The HFY he had seen in the colony were huge, standing over 2 meters tall. They had thick scales like armor, sharp claws, and wings that could block out the sun. They looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, if those dragons had learned to build spaceships and conquer worlds. But this creature was tiny. It was no bigger than a cat, with skin so thin Marcus could almost see through it. Its wings were wet and crumpled, stuck to its back like wet paper. Its eyes were enormous, taking up half its face, and they were the color of liquid gold. The creature opened its mouth and made a sound. It was not a roar or a hiss. It was a chirp, high and weak and scared. The sound went straight into Marcus's heart and stayed there. "Hey there," Marcus said softly. "Hey, little one. It's okay. You're okay." The creature looked at him. Its golden eyes seemed to focus, and it chirped again. Then it tried to stand up and immediately fell over. Its legs were too weak to hold it. Marcus reached out slowly, carefully, and touched the creature's head. Its skin was warm, almost hot, and softer than he expected. The creature leaned into his touch like a cat asking to be petted, and that was when Marcus realized the creature was dying. The signs were clear to someone with his training. Its breathing was too fast. Its skin was changing color, going from a healthy gold to a pale gray. Its temperature was dropping. even though it should have been warm. Without its mother, without the special care that Kethvari hatchlings needed, this baby was going to die within hours. Marcus did not have time to think about politics or revenge or what was right and wrong. He only had time to act. He grabbed the heating unit and turned it up as high as it would go. He searched through the ruined clinic for any supplies that had survived. He found some protein supplements meant for sick dogs, some vitamin solutions, and a feeding tube small enough for a kitten. For the next 12 hours, Marcus did not rest. He held the creature against his chest to give it warmth from his own body. He mixed different combinations of nutrients, trying to find something the creature could digest. He monitored its temperature, its breathing, its heartbeat. He talked to it constantly because he had read somewhere that newborn creatures needed to hear voices. "Come on," he said, again and again. "Come on, little one. Don't give up. Don't you dare give up." The creature almost died twice that first night. Both times, Marcus brought it back with warmth and food and stubborn refusal to let go. By morning, the creature was still alive, still weak, but no longer getting worse. Marcus looked at the small-scale body curled against his chest. The creature had wrapped its thin tail around his arm, holding on tight even in its sleep. Its breathing had slowed to a normal rhythm. Its color was coming back. "I need to call you something," Marcus said. His voice was rough from talking all night. "I can't just keep calling you the creature." He thought about it for a while. The creature was warm, even hot, like it had a fire burning inside it. It had come from the ashes of destruction, the last spark of life in a dead world. "Ember," Marcus said. "I'm going to call you Ember." The creature opened one golden eye, looked at him, and chirped softly. Then it closed its eye and went back to sleep. The days turned into weeks. Marcus fell into a routine. He would wake up, check on Ember, feed her, and then go out to search the ruins for supplies. He found food in the basements of destroyed stores. He found medical equipment in the wreckage of the hospital. He found batteries and tools and clean water in places that had been protected from the blasts. He also found bodies. He buried them when he could, said words over them when he had time. But there were so many, and he was just one person. Eventually, he stopped looking. Ember grew stronger every day. Her wings dried out and began to stretch. Her scales hardened and took on colors, beautiful patterns of gold and red and orange. She learned to walk, then to run, then to make small jumps that would someday be flight. She also learned to speak Dod. It started with simple sounds, imitations of the words Marcus said most often. Food came first, then warm, then good. But the word she learned best, the word she said most clearly, was hurt. Marcus had said it too many times while treating her, while fixing the small injuries she got from exploring the basement. "Does this hurt?" "This might hurt a little. I'm sorry if this hurts." Now Ember would point at things and say, "Hurt." She would point at the ruins above them and say, "Hurt." She would point at Marcus when he looked sad and say, "Hurt." "Yes." Marcus told her one night, holding her small body in his lap. "Yes, Ember, everything hurts. But we're still here. We're still alive. And that has to mean something." Ember looked up at him with her golden eyes. She was too young to understand, too young to know what her people had done or why Marcus had saved her. She only knew that this human, this strange warm creature without scales or wings, took care of her, fed her, kept her safe. She pressed her head against his chest, right over his heart, and listened to it beat. "Father Warm," she said, trying out the new words. Marcus felt tears running down his face. The first tears he had cried since the bombs fell. "Yes," he said. "Yes, Ember, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the dead world was silent. But in the basement of a ruined clinic, a human and a dragon were building something new. something that had no name yet but felt like family. 8 months after the bombs fell, the HFY came back. Marcus was in the garden he had built on the roof of the clinic when he heard the sound. It was a deep hum, like thunder that did not stop, growing louder every second. He looked up and saw 3 ships descending through the gray clouds. They were black and angular, shaped like arrowheads, and they were heading straight for the colony. His heart turned to ice in his chest. "Ember!" he shouted, running for the stairs. "Ember, hide!" But Ember did not hide. She was 9 months old now, the size of a large dog, and she had never learned to be afraid of her own people. She stood in the middle of the basement, her wings half spread, watching the ceiling shake with the sound of landing ships. "What is it?" she asked. Her speech had improved so much over the months. She could speak almost as well as a human child now. "What is happening, Father Warren?" Marcus grabbed her and pulled her behind a pile of boxes. "Your people," he said. "The HFY. They are here, my people." Ember tilted her head. She had heard Marcus talk about the HFY before, but she did not really understand what that meant. To her, Marcus was her people. He was all she had ever known. The sound of boots came from above. Heavy boots, many of them walking through the ruins of the clinic. Marcus held Ember close and tried not to breathe. A voice called out in a language Marcus did not understand. Then the same voice called out in Standard, the common language that most species in the galaxy used. "We know someone is here. We have scanned for life signs. Come out now, and you will not be harmed." Marcus did not believe that for a second, but he also knew he could not hide forever. Sooner or later, they would find him. Better to face them on his feet than cowering in a corner. "Stay behind me," he whispered to Ember. "No matter what happens. Stay behind me." He stood up and walked out of the basement. There were 12 HFY soldiers waiting for him. They were exactly as he remembered, tall and terrible, covered in scales that looked like metal armor. Each one carried a weapon that hummed with energy. Behind them stood another HFY, older and larger than the rest, with scars covering half her face and eyes that seemed to look through Marcus rather than at him. The soldiers raised their weapons when they saw him. "A human," one of them said. "It survived." "Kill it," said another. "Leave no witnesses. Wait." The old HFY held up one clawed hand. The soldiers froze. "I want to know how this human lived when everything else died." Marcus stood as straight as he could. He was thin and weak after 8 months of surviving on scraps. His clothes were torn and dirty. He looked nothing like a threat, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "I hid in the basement," he said. "The walls were thick enough to survive the blasts." The old HFY studied him for a long moment. "You are the only one? The only human on this entire planet?" "As far as I know." "Then you have seen things. You know things. Things that could be dangerous for the Dominion if they were ever told." She turned to her soldiers. "Kill him." The soldiers stepped forward, weapons raised. And then Ember came out of the basement. She ran past Marcus before he could stop her, placing herself between him and the soldiers. Her wings spread wide, making her look bigger than she was. Her scales caught the light, shimmering with colors that seemed almost to glow. And her eyes, those golden eyes, were full of a fire that Marcus had never seen before. "No," Ember shouted. The word echoed through the ruined clinic. "You will not hurt him." The soldiers stopped. They stared at her with expressions that Marcus could not read. The old HFY stepped forward slowly. Her scarred face showed something new now, something that looked almost like shock. "A hatchling," she said. "A HFY hatchling here on this dead world." She looked at Marcus. "Explain." Marcus put his hand on Ember's shoulder, both to comfort her and to keep her from attacking. "I found her egg in the ruins of your embassy. It was the only one that survived. I raised her. You raised her. The old Kethvari repeated the words like they made no sense. A human raised a Kethvari child. Yes, why? It was such a simple question, but Marcus did not know how to answer it. Why had he saved Ember? Why had he spent 8 months caring for the child of his enemies? Why had he loved her, despite everything? Because she needed help, he said finally. Because I could help her. Because that's what I do. The old Kethvari was silent for a long time. Then she spoke again, and her voice was different now, softer. I am Matriarch Kethsala. Those eggs were mine. My children, left behind because of sabotage by my political enemies. I have mourned them for 8 months. I came here only to recover their remains, to give them proper rights. She looked at Ember, and Marcus saw something break in those ancient eyes. Something like grief, or hope, or both. But one survived. One of my children lives. Ember pressed closer to Marcus. She did not know this old dragon, did not understand what was happening. She only knew that these strangers frightened her, and that Father Worm was the safest place in the world. She is not yours anymore, Marcus said. The words came out before he could stop them, and he knew they might get him killed. But he said them anyway. You left her to die. I saved her. She is mine now. The soldiers made angry sounds and stepped forward again. But Ember turned to face them, and when she opened her mouth, fire came out. It was just a small flame, weak and flickering, the first fire she had ever made. But it was enough to make the soldiers step back in surprise. He is my nest, Ember said. She was speaking in the Kethvari language now, words that Marcus had never taught her, words that must have come from somewhere deep in her blood. Harm him, and my fire is yours forever. Matriarch Kethsala looked at the human and the dragon child standing together, and she made a decision that would change everything. Lower your weapons, she told her soldiers. When they hesitated, her voice became thunder. Lower them now. The weapons went down. You, the matriarch said to Marcus, you have done something that should not be possible. You have kept a flame alive when my own people tried to put it out. You have given warmth to a child of fire. She reached into a pouch at her side and pulled out a small metal token, carved with symbols Marcus did not recognize. I name you Flamekeeper, she said. This is a title that has not existed before. I create it now for you. It means you are under my protection. Any Kethvari who harms you answers to me. Marcus took the token. It was warm in his hand, like Ember's scales. And my daughter? He asked. What happens to her? The matriarch looked at Ember for a long moment. Something passed between them, some understanding that Marcus could not see. She is yours, the matriarch said. You have earned her. But she is also mine, by blood. She will need to learn both parts of herself. She turned to leave, then stopped. The galaxy will hear of this, human. What you have done, it will not stay hidden. Be ready for what comes next. Marcus watched the Kethvari ships lift off and disappear into the clouds. Then he looked down at Ember, who was still pressed against his leg, her small body shaking. Are they gone? She asked. They're gone. Will they come back? Marcus thought about the matriarch's words. The galaxy will hear of this. Yes, he said. I think they will. But that's okay. We'll be ready. Ember looked up at him with her golden eyes, and in them Marcus saw something he had not expected. Trust. Complete. Absolute trust. I made fire. Father Worm, she said. Did you see? I made fire. Despite everything, Marcus smiled. I saw, he said. You were very brave. I learned from you. They went back into the basement together, and the sky above the dead world was quiet once more. The story spread like fire through dry grass. It started with the HFY soldiers who had been there. They told their friends, who told their families, who told strangers in trading stations across the galaxy. Within 3 months, everyone knew about the human who had survived genocide and raised a dragon child. Some did not believe it. Humans were weak, they said. Humans were prey. A human could not possibly have kept a HFY hatchling alive without proper equipment, proper food, proper knowledge. It must be a lie or a trick or some kind of political game, but others believed. And they began to ask questions that made powerful people uncomfortable. If a human could love the child of his enemy, what did that say about humans? If a human could show mercy when mercy made no sense, what did that say about the rest of the galaxy? If a human could survive when survival seemed impossible, what did that say about underestimating them? Marcus knew nothing about this at first. He and Ember were still living in the ruins of New Thessaly, still surviving day by day. The matriarch sent supplies, sometimes food and medicine and equipment that arrived in unmarked containers dropped from orbit. But no one came to visit. No one came to take them away. Then, 1 year after the bombs, the ships started arriving. The first was a small trading vessel from the Confederacy, a group of species who had joined together for protection and profit. The captain was a tall being covered in blue fur, with 6 eyes and a voice like music. He said his name was Kelf, and he wanted to interview Marcus for the information networks. "Your story is everywhere," Kelf said, sitting in the basement that had become Marcus's home. "Every species in the galaxy is talking about you. The human who saved a dragon." Marcus did not know what to say. He had not saved Ember for fame or attention. He had saved her because it was right. "I just did what anyone would do," he said. Elf made a sound that might have been laughter. "That is exactly what makes it interesting. No other species would have done what you did." The Confederacy ran calculations. If one of our people had found that egg, there was a 94% chance they would have destroyed it. Revenge, survival instinct, fear. All of these would have won, but not for a human? Apparently not. And that is what fascinates us. More visitors came after that. Scientists who wanted to study Ember and understand how she had survived. Politicians who wanted to use Marcus as a symbol for their causes. Reporters who wanted to tell his story in their own way. Soldiers who wanted to see the human who had made Matriarch HFY show mercy. Some of them were friendly. Some of them were not. Marcus learned to be careful about who he trusted, but the most important visitor came 6 months later. Her name was Yethra, and she was young for a HFY, only about 50 years old. She had scales of deep purple and eyes like black stars. She walked into the basement without permission and stood looking at Ember for a long time. "You are the child of Matriarch HFY," she said finally, "the only surviving heir to one of the oldest bloodlines in the Dominion." Ember, now almost 2 years old and the size of a small horse, stood up and spread her wings. She had learned to be wary of her own kind. "And you are what?" Ember asked. "Another soldier? Another politician?" "I am your cousin," Yethra said, "and I came to warn you." She explained the situation in quick, sharp words. The HFY Dominion was splitting apart. For centuries, they had been united by a simple belief. The HFY were the strongest, and the strong should rule. This belief had led them to conquer dozens of worlds and destroy countless species. But now, that belief was being questioned. Ember's story had started something. Young HFY were asking why strength had to mean cruelty. Reformers were arguing that coexistence with other species was possible. Philosophers were wondering if fire could be used to warm instead of burn. The old powers did not like these questions. They saw Ember as a threat, a symbol of weakness that needed to be destroyed. "There are those who want you dead," Yethra said. "Not because of anything you have done, but because of what you represent. A HFY raised by a human, taught human values, speaking of peace instead of war. You are dangerous to everything they believe in. Ember looked at Marcus. He had been quiet through all of this, watching and listening. What do you think, Father Worm? She asked. Marcus had been thinking about this for a long time. He had known, ever since the matriarch's visit, that their quiet life could not last forever. The galaxy was too big, too complicated, too full of conflict. I think, he said slowly, that we have a choice. We can hide here forever, hoping no one finds us. Or we can go out there and show them what we've learned. What have we learned? Marcus smiled. It was a tired smile, the smile of a man who had seen too much. But it was real. That love is stronger than hate. That kindness is not weakness. That you can choose what kind of fire you want to be. Ember was quiet for a moment. Then she turned to Jethro. Tell me more, she said. Tell me about the HFY who want change. Tell me about the ones who are asking questions. Jethro's eyes widened slightly. She had expected the child to be frightened, to want to run and hide. She had not expected this. You want to join them? I want to help them, Ember said. I want to show them what my father showed me, that there is another way to live. Over the next year, Ember became something new. She traveled with Jethro to HFY worlds that had never seen a human. She spoke to crowds of young dragons about the man who had raised her. She told them about cold nights when he held her close to keep her warm. She told them about the food he made for her when she was sick. She told them about the way he spoke to her with patience and gentleness, even when she made mistakes. He is not strong like us, Ember said. He cannot breathe fire. He cannot fly. His skin is soft and his life is short. But he has something that we do not. He has the ability to love without conditions, without asking what he will get in return. Some HFY listened. Some laughed. Some tried to attack her. But Ember had grown strong now, and her fire was no longer weak. And always, wherever she went, Marcus went with her. Not because she needed protection, but because they were a team. They were family. The galaxy watched this strange pair, the human and the dragon, and did not know what to think. Some said they were fools. Some said they were heroes. Some said they were the beginning of something that would change everything. But Marcus did not care about any of that. He only cared about the dragon at his side, the child he had saved from the ashes, who was now trying to save others. Are you proud of me, Father Worm? Ember asked one night, as they sat together on the deck of a ship flying between stars. Marcus put his hand on her scales. They were warm, as always, warm with the fire that burned inside her. Every single day, he said, and somewhere in the darkness of space, the future waited for them, full of danger and hope and the chance to build something better. 20 years had passed as the bombs fell on new THES SIY. Dr. Marcus Chun stood on the hill above his clinic, watching the sun set over a city that should not exist. Where there had once been only ash and death, there were now buildings and parks and streets full of life. Ships landed and took off from the new spaceport. Children played in gardens that grew on ground that had once been poisoned. New Thessaly had been reborn. Marcus was old now. His hair was completely gray, and his face was lined with wrinkles. His hands, which had once been so steady, now shook a little when he worked. But he still ran the clinic. He still treated sick animals and helped them heal. He still did the work he had always done. The only difference was that his patients came from much farther away now. A bell rang at the clinic door, and Marcus turned to see a young HFY coming in. She was carrying a small creature in her arms, something that looked like a cross between a cat and a lizard, and her scales were pale with worry. "Dr. Chun?" she said. "They told me you could help. My pet is sick, and the other doctors don't know what to do." Marcus smiled and gestured for her to come in. Let's take a look. This was his life now. Humans came to him, of course, but so did Kethvari and Confederacy citizens and members of species he had never heard of before. They came because they had heard the stories. They came because they trusted him. They came because, in a galaxy full of war and hatred, his clinic was a place where everyone was treated the same. He was examining the sick pet when the door opened again and a familiar warmth filled the room. "Father Juan," Ember said, "are you working too hard again?" Marcus looked up and felt his heart swell, as it did every time he saw her. Ember was magnificent now. She had grown to her full size, standing 3 meters tall when she reared up on her back legs. Her scales shimmered with colors that seemed to shift and dance in the light, more beautiful than any Kethvari Marcus had ever seen. Her wings could carry her across continents, and her fire could melt steel. But her eyes were the same. Those golden eyes full of warmth and kindness still looked at Marcus the way they had when she was a hatchling curled against his chest. "Just one more patient," Marcus said. "Then I'll rest." Ember made a sound that was something between a laugh and a snort. "You always say that." She was right, of course. Marcus never stopped working, never stopped caring for the creatures that needed him. It was simply who he was. While Marcus treated the sick pet, Ember sat outside and watched the city. So much had changed since that first terrible day. So much had happened that neither of them could have predicted. After the story of Marcus and Ember had spread through the galaxy, something strange began to happen. People started coming to New Thessaly, not to conquer it or study it, but to help rebuild it. First came humans from other colonies, survivors and refugees who wanted to create something new. Then came Kethvari reformers, followers of Ember who believed in her message of peace. Then came others, members of species that had never met before, drawn together by the idea that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy could be different. It had not been easy. There had been fighting and arguments and times when everything seemed ready to fall apart. The old powers of the Kethvari Dominion had tried many times to destroy what they were building. 3 assassination attempts on Ember had failed. 2 wars had been fought on the borders of their new territory. But through it all, they had survived. They had grown. They had become something that the galaxy had never seen before. A place where different species lived together, not because they had to, but because they chose to. Ember had become a leader of this new movement. She spoke to crowds of thousands, telling her story again and again. She met with politicians and generals and kings, always carrying the same message. Fire can warm as well as burn. Strength can protect as well as destroy. And even the deepest wounds can heal if you give them time and love. Some called her the bridge. Others called her the flame of peace. The Kethvari who followed her called her something else. A word that had no translation in standard, but meant something like the one who carries warmth. But to Marcus, she was still just Ember, still the scared hatchling who had said hurt as her first word. Still his daughter. The pet was going to be fine. It was just a simple infection, easily treated with the right medicine. Marcus gave the young Kethvari instructions and refused any payment. "How can I thank you?" she asked. "Take good care of her," Marcus said, nodding at the pet. "That's all the thanks I need." After she left, Marcus sat down heavily in his chair. He was tired today, more tired than usual. His body was starting to fail him, as all bodies did eventually. He knew he did not have many years left. Ember came inside and lay down next to him, curling her great body around his chair like she had curled around him when she was small. The warmth of her scales seeped into his old bones. "I was thinking about the day you found me," she said. "The day I hatched. I think about it often," Marcus said. "Do you ever regret it? Saving me?" Marcus reached out and put his hand on her head, just as he had done thousands of times before. Her scales were smooth and warm under his palm. "Not for a single second," he said. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the lights of the city come on as darkness fell. Ships passed overhead, carrying travelers from 100 different worlds. Somewhere in the distance, children were laughing. "The galaxy still fights," Ember said. "Wars still happen. People still hurt each other. I know. Sometimes I wonder if what we're doing makes any difference." Marcus smiled. It was the same smile he had given her on that first night, when she was dying in his arms, and he refused to let her go. "When I found your egg," he said, "I could have crushed it. That was the easy thing to do, the logical thing. But I didn't. I chose to save you instead. And that one choice led to all of this." He gestured at the window, at the city beyond, at the ships full of different species learning to live together. "That's how change happens, Ember. One choice at a time. One act of kindness after another. We can't fix everything. We can't save everyone. But we can do our part. We can be the spark that lights a bigger fire." Ember rested her head on her front legs and looked at him with those ancient golden eyes. "You really believe that, don't you?" "I have to," Marcus said, "because the alternative is giving up. And I've never been very good at giving up." Ember laughed, a deep rumbling sound that shook the walls. "No, you certainly haven't." They stayed there together as the night grew dark and the stars came out. Two beings who should have been enemies, who had become father and daughter, who had changed the galaxy simply by refusing to hate each other. And somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, others saw the lights of New Thessaly and wondered what was happening there. Some of them were curious. Some were afraid. Some were angry at this challenge to the way things had always been. But some of them, the ones who had heard the story of the human and the dragon, felt something else. They felt hope. They felt the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the universe could be kind. Marcus closed his eyes and listened to Ember's breathing, deep and steady beside him. He was tired. He was old. He knew his story was almost over, but Ember's story was just beginning. And she would carry the flame he had given her long after he was gone, passing it on to others, lighting the way through the darkness. That was enough, Marcus decided. That was more than enough. In the end, that was everything.